Call of Duty didn't survive 20 years by playing it safe. Every few years, it made one massive change that rewired the entire franchise. So today, we're building a timeline of every moment that permanently changed Call of Duty forever. Let's dive in. Now, we're going to start it off in the original Call of Duty, which set the tone for the future of the franchise. Now, World War II shooters weren't rare by any means at the time, but the original COD redefined the formula by adding things like aim-down iron sights. Now, Call of Duty wasn't the first game to ever feature ADS, but it certainly popularized it and created the baseline for what we see today. The funny part is, after Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, Battlefield, and others would all begin to add ADS into their game. Now, on top of this, it actually made major innovations when it came to immersing the player in the war. If you played the game, you know that the player was affected by an explosion. They'd suffer some shell shock, which would cause a ringing in the ear, blurry vision, and slowed movement in order to sell the effect of being disoriented. Now, the AI in the game was also really smart for the time and working with the player to complete objectives instead of relying on the player to do everything themselves. Now, next up, we have United Offensive, which was an expansion released for the original game. And while it's best known for adding more campaign levels, modes, and multiplayer maps to the game, it also introduced major features for the series. This was the first Call of Duty to feature sprinting and the ability to cook frag grenades before throwing them. The sprinting created a much faster gameplay experience, while cooking frags allowed players to be more strategic with their grenades. They could time their grenade to explode as soon as it hit the ground, preventing enemies from having the chance to run away. United Offensive also added a very early version of ranks to multiplayer, rewarding players for both their time and performance. After earning enough points, you'd rank up and gain perks like extra ammo, grenades, and binoculars that could be used for airstrikes, which would later lay the foundation for kill streaks later on. Next up is Call of Duty 2, and for the first time ever, Call of Duty was available on consoles with the release of this game. The PS2, OG Xbox, and GameCube featured a spin-off known as Call of Duty 2, Big Red 1, while Xbox 360 had a console exclusivity over the mainline proper COD 2. This actually marked the start of an iconic partnership between Call of Duty and Xbox that would run for a full decade. Now, arguably the biggest change introduced in Call of Duty 2 was the healing system. In the previous game, players had a health bar and needed med packs in order to patch themselves up. In Call of Duty 2, the health bar was removed and replaced by a screen that would progressively get bloodier the more damage you took. To heal, all you needed to do was find cover and wait a few seconds for your screen to clear up. It's easy to take something like this for granted today, but it massively changed Call of Duty forever. You no longer need med packs. Players have the ability to quickly and strategically recover in combat and turn the tables on whoever is attacking them. It was yet another step to creating a faster paced style of gameplay. Now, for Call of Duty 3, this was actually the first time we ever got back-to-back mainline games. Although United Offensive and Finest Hour came out a year after the original game, they were actually marketed as an expansion and spin-off game, not a full-blown sequel. Call of Duty 3 was a part of Activision's aggressive strategy to make Call of Duty a blockbuster franchise with yearly releases that would keep players consistently well-fed. To achieve this, Activision enlisted the help of Treyarch and created a 2-year development cycle for each studio. COD 4 is where Call of Duty starts to become the franchise we know it as today. The series leaves World War II behind in favor of a highly cinematic game set in present day, taking inspiration from the battles and headlines happening in the real world. It was a massive tonal shift that also gave the series its first M rating, giving the developers freedom to tell darker, more mature stories. And when it came to multiplayer, Call of Duty would not be where it is today without COD 4. Infinity Ward massively overhauled the multiplayer experience with new ideas like Create a Class, allowing players to make custom loadouts with personalized weapons, and perks were also introduced and gave players options on ways to buff their character with things like extra ammo, improved traits like longer sprint time, and faster reloads. and even bonuses like the ability to drop a live grenade after being killed. The ranking system was also expanded to allow players to progressively unlock weapons, perks, and cosmetic items like gold camos for guns. Now, for those who hit max rank, they could prestige and reset all of their progress in exchange for a special symbol next to their name. Players also were able to rack up enough kills without dying, were rewarded with kill streaks. After getting 3 kills without dying, you get a UAV, 5 kills an airstrike, and 7 kills you get an attack helicopter that would hover over the map and automatically kill enemies. All of these features revolutionized not only Call of Duty, but multiplayer shooters as a whole. The multiplayer became thoroughly rewarding and incentivized players to grind and spend time on their game. Now, World at War's biggest and most impactful change was the inclusion of zombies, a co-op mode where players fought off endless waves of undead soldiers. Now, while it was pretty bare bones at first, it was a strong template for a highly addictive and fun mode that was different from campaign and multiplayer. Now, most of you know the mode was initially hidden from players until they finished the campaign. But once players found out, it became one of the defining features of the game. Now it's pretty much in every single Call of Duty game released these days, featuring a zombies mode and one of the biggest selling points for many fans of the franchise. Now, this would mark one of the biggest shifts for Call of Duty in history, as it drove new fans to the series that were only interested in killing zombies with their friends. World at War's DLC also laid the foundation for the lore of zombies and began to turn it into more than just a mindless zombie shooter. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 was the first time the series ever continued the narrative of a previous game. Before this, each game told a new story with all new characters. But MW2 was a direct continuation due to how much players loved Captain Price, Soap, and the overall direction of the story. As a result, players were able to invest into characters more than before instead of treating them as generic soldiers. Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer expanded on all the ideas introduced in COD 4. There were now way more kill streaks, including a game-ending tactical nuke, more customization options with calling cards and emblems, and more ways to keep matches feeling unique and fresh. MW2 also created a much more fulfilling experience with constant dopamine hits thanks to flashy on-screen accolades like First Blood and others. So long as you were getting kills or capturing objectives, it felt like the game was constantly patting you on the back with satisfying sound effects and on-screen pop-ups. Finally, Infinity Ward tried to compete with zombies with its own co-op mode called Spec Ops. Players could pair up with a partner and work their way through short, linear missions, often reusing environments from the campaign. While it wasn't nearly as successful as zombies, it was a fun addition to Call of Duty and something that was enjoyable with a friend. It would later return in MW3 and MW19, but hasn't caught on outside of the Modern Warfare series. Black Ops was another game changer as it introduced the franchise's second and longest running sub-series to date. Treyarch had now finally earned the ability to stand alongside Infinity Ward with its own original series that had a unique identity thanks to a twisty story rooted in American conspiracies. Treyarch hired Avatar's Sam Worthington to portray the first ever fully voiced protagonist in the series, Alex Mason. The game established another group of legendary characters and helped cement the golden age of Call of Duty outside of the Modern Warfare series. Zombies, of course, made its return, but this time with more depth thanks to maps, perks, and an ongoing storyline through Easter eggs and much more. Treyarch also hit a secret mode known as Dead Ops Arcade, which was a top-down twin-stick shooter that was thrown in as a bonus for fans. Black Ops 1 remains one of the best zombies experiences to date, as it took the concept just far enough to keep it interesting without overdoing it. In multiplayer, Treyarch introduced Emblem Editor, which allowed fans to get creative with their own in-game identity. Of course, the freedom allowed for some pretty controversial images in the game, but it was a beloved addition. Black Ops also featured the first ever currency in Call of Duty with COD points. Although these could be earned by playing the game, They were used to buy virtually everything in multiplayer, including weapons, attachments, and cosmetics. There was a bit more freedom when it came to customizing your soldier as well, as you could add things like face paint to make your character your own. Black Ops introduced one of the first instances of more advanced movement as well. Players could now dolphin dive, allowing them to dodge grenades quickly and then leap into cover and avoid danger. Black Ops 2 began to take the series into the future with a focus of unmanned drones, massive cyber attacks, and villains who use social media to rally an army. It was a big departure from previous Call of Duty games, but the change in setting was needed in order to keep things feeling fresh. Treyarch delivered one of the most refined and well-polished Call of Duty games of all time, thanks to the sleek gameplay, a ton of content, and things like League Play, which gave more competitive players a space to play and be challenged. Black Ops 2 continued to shake up the formula fans expected, as well by offering score streaks, which allowed players to earn their streaks by killing enemies, playing the objective, and earning passive score through things like assists. One of the biggest additions to this game was the Pick 10 system. Treyarch lifted a lot of the restrictions with the Create a Class system at the cost of only being able to pick 10 items for your class. You could sacrifice all your attachments for more perks or vice versa, carry 2 primary weapons, and much more. But you had to be very thoughtful about your class. You couldn't have everything, but you had a lot more freedom and choice in customizing your loadout. Although the system had to become a staple of the franchise, it did force developers to think about how they could shake up the class system in interesting ways. Advanced Warfare is one of the biggest leaps forward in the series, though that's why it's so divisive. After years of people complaining that Call of Duty wasn't changing enough, Sledgehammer Games decided to radically overhaul the series. Players were now equipped with exosuits, allowing for more powerful advanced movement, such as being able to dash around, jump extremely high, and slide. It's one of the first Call of Duty games to put such a heavy focus on movement and force players to completely change the way they play now that things were more vertical. It was a big change and one that has divided players for years. Some thought that it was the change that Call of Duty needed, while others felt like it was moving too far away from what makes Call of Duty what it is. However, that wasn't the only big change. Advanced Warfare also added loot boxes, customizable armor, and weapon variants. Players could earn boxes that would randomly spit out different loot, something that also proved to be controversial as well. Depending on pure luck, players could have better guns than other people. Advanced Warfare was also the first non-Treyarch game to feature a zombies mode. The mode obeyed a lot of structure and ideas from Treyarch Zombies mode, but it differentiated itself with the exosuits and advanced movement. Treyarch decided to keep expanding on the advanced movement from Advanced Warfare with Black Ops 3, this time by adding jetpacks and wall running. This led to some of the most fluid movement in the Call of Duty series and resulted in Treyarch creating more interesting maps that allowed talented movement players the ability to flank by running around the outside of the typical map boundaries. Still, the advanced movement remained a controversial direction with fans who wanted that more traditional boots on the ground gameplay. Black Ops 3 also introduced specialists as well, which let players pick pre-made characters that had special abilities. This included things like a powerful bow and arrow, a one-shot kill hand cannon, and much more. It was yet another way to shake up the multiplayer experience and find ways to reward players on their in-game performance. Zombies also expanded to feature more progression with XP, gobblegums, and other elements, and it took zombies from a mode where you started from scratch every time into something that you could actually grind. Infinite Warfare was the last game in the advanced movement era of the franchise and is often regarded as one of the least liked games in the series from a multiplayer standpoint. Ultimately, players felt like Infinity Ward took things too far by taking Call of Duty to space and largely rejected the game. In many ways, it's the game that killed the advanced movement era of the series, but at least we got our first ever remaster with Call of Duty 4. Black Ops 4 was the first and last Call of Duty game to not feature a campaign. This sparked a lot of controversy among fans, of course. Now, although the game still performed well, fans were frustrated to see a major mode cut from the series. Instead, Treyarch replaced it with its first ever Call of Duty Battle Royale, Blackout. Now, this was a more arcadey take on the genre, which was very new at the time. There were zombies on the map, iconic POIs from older Black Ops games, and a more interesting loot system. Although it was short-lived, it remains a fan favorite take on Battle Royale genre, and it will even be brought back in Warzone later this year. Modern Warfare 2019. This game was a much-needed reset for the COD franchise. It took things back to the basics and put an end to a very experimental run of Call of Duty games. Infinity Ward decided to reboot the Modern Warfare series with a more grounded, realistic, and almost milsim style of gameplay. It added doors to multiplayer maps, punchier gunplay, and a new system called Gunsmith, which allowed for much more extensive gun customization. MW19 is both the game that saved Call of Duty during one of the most controversial eras, but it also created many of the problems that have plagued the series since, with things like aggressive SBMM. Shortly after the release of this game, Warzone was released and changed the direction of Call of Duty for the foreseeable future. Now, Modern Warfare 3 was the first time two games were released back-to-back in the same Call of Duty sub-franchise. As a result, MW3 feels like a bit of an expansion to MW2, but it also gave fans a lot of things they've been asking for. The biggest example of this was the remastered maps from the OG MW2, which made up the entire roster at launch. The gameplay was also much faster and less tactical compared to the previous MW game, making for a much more enjoyable experience. Now, Black Ops 6 introduced Omnimovement to the series, giving players a full 360 degree of control over their movement. You can now spin around in midair, roll around on the ground, and much more. It was Treyarch's way of creating a deeper movement system without having to rely on jetpacks or wall running. Some people feel like it's led to making the game much sweatier, but has also allowed the series to keep expanding on its gameplay without changing things too much. And all of this leads us to the most recent game, Black Ops 7. The game was an answer to many of the problems people have had for years. Treyarch got rid of the over-the-top SBMM that has plagued the series for half a decade, gave players more choices with the ability to toggle divisive features like tactical sprint and much more, and it still managed to add new ideas as well, such as the wall jump, which towed the line between boots on the ground movement and advanced movement. Unfortunately, a terrible campaign and franchise fatigue has hurt this game a ton. Black Ops 7 is the worst selling game in the series since 2008 and prompted Activision to release a statement promising that it would never do back-to-back games in the sub-franchise anymore. They also committed to more innovation and trying to do right by the player, but we'll just have to see if they honor their promises. Either way, it's a game that will undoubtedly change the direction and future of Call of Duty games going forward. I hope you enjoyed this video. My question to you would be, what do you think is the most impactful Call of Duty game, and what was the change that really changed everything for you? Hope you enjoyed this video once again. Leave a like if you did, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you in the next one.